What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Fight HQ preview for UFC Vegas number 67. Of course, as always, I am joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. We appreciate you checking us out here over at Fight HQ. I'm sure you know by now, this is our new home. This is where you're going to be able to check us out as we are no longer with Stokastic. We loved our 2+ years over there at Stokastic. Those guys did a lot of great stuff for the entire team over there, from Alex, Nolan, Chris, Tom, Lawfully, Eric, all the guys over there. And look, we have a good relationship with those guys. If you go in the YouTube comments here in the description, you'll see the fact that we do have a little bit of a partner program with them. So when you take advantage of that, that's how you help me and Pete out. But we appreciate everyone over there at Stokastic. They've got great content over there. Check those guys out for all the DFS coverage they have over here. But we're appreciated for everything they did for us. And Pete, happy Friday, bro.
Happy Friday. Yes, it was a fantastic chapter of our lives for sure. Personally, I'm still bummed. Obviously I wanted to continue to grow with the company. I really loved our stay with them, and I was hoping that it was going to be a longer run, but this is how life works, man. And super thankful for the opportunity to even be a part of a platform like that in a great company with good guys. You even talk about from like the producer aspect, like Tyler did a lot for us. Super appreciative for Tyler. And, it's nice because when the world kind of shut down, MMA was in the spotlight, and we happened to be a part of the biggest platform there is for daily fantasy. And it was nice to kind of provide some good MMA coverage. We're going to continue to do the same thing here. But like Jason stated, check out the description below. We are working together in hopes of growing together. So that is the plan, of course. But Jason and I are going to be here on Fight HQ providing content for all sorts of MMA action, from MMA betting to daily fantasy to different websites that Jason likes to dabble in from a daily fantasy and prop betting type of perspective. So this is a card to kick off 2023. And, it's already been hit from the main card, from the main event standpoint, and we already lost one fight as well. So 2023 is off to a banger of a start for the UFC. But this has become basically the norm ever since the world shut down, and we've been dealing with it throughout the COVID era: cancellations, illnesses, weight cuts, all that. So happy to kick it off with you here, Jason, on Fight HQ, and ready to get into it.
Of course, you mentioned about things that we're doing over here at Fight HQ. My guy Pete set up the Discord channel. Got to give Pete all the credit in the world for that. So if you want to join our Discord channel, you look right there in the description below. You can join our Discord channel, join the community that we're creating over here at Fight HQ. Of course, if you got any questions, line those up in the chat. Pete, we're first card of 2023, and we're right back into the mix of losing fights on weigh-in day.
Yeah, I mean, goodness gracious. I thought it was a joke. That's why I sent it to you. Like, I legitimately thought it was a joke because I'm like, I mean, how many times has Sijara Eubanks missed weight? Like, how many times has she missed weight? And I thought it was just like a troll account. I read the article quick and I sent it to you, and you're like, yep. I'm like, how many chances? At this point, I actually think the UFC might cut ties with Sijara Eubanks, personally. And it's kind of sad because Eubanks is a fighter that I held in quite high regard in hopes of her possibly challenging for a title. She has all the skills. Her jiu-jitsu is nasty. Her boxing is solid. It's her cardio that abandons her throughout each fight. And I actually think that she can't get out of her own damn way. So I think she's kind of been her own worst enemy as far as her career goes.
Yeah, you mentioned about those prop websites that I like to go to. One of the things that we've let everyone in our community know is that, if there's some sites out there you want us to take a deep dive into, like, one of our members in Discord. By the way, it is free to join our Discord. We're not charging you. We're not doing any of that. Totally free to join. And they mentioned about underdog fantasy. So here in my spreadsheet, I do have some underdog fantasy props, and I will tell you that I was looking at the Sijara Eubanks props. Underdog takedowns set was at 1 with her, which I thought was way off. I mean, like this was a fight, and looking over at Prize Picks, she was at 1.5. I love the more over there. I was going to be all over that one because you looked at that matchup. You said, well, that's Eubanks' way to win this fight is to make it, utilizing that grappling. But of course, if you got any questions on the fights, be sure to line those up in chat. If you are listening to this after the fact, we do appreciate that, whether that's here on YouTube or maybe it's over on one of the podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I know someone had hit me up and saying, hey, are you going to be putting the show over there? I was like, yep, well, the show will be over there as well. But of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, really would appreciate that. We're trying to grow this YouTube channel. And of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up. That really does help us a lot as well. Typically, we'll be here every Friday and Saturday of UFC event weeks. Pete, I don't know if you've looked at the schedule.
My life's been nuts, man. I haven't looked at a damn thing.
I mean, look, it's understandable. You got a kid on the way. I know what's going on with the business for you. I get all of that. We have 10 UFC shows in the next 11 weeks.
All right, cool. Nice. That's good. I mean, the hiatus felt like forever. I felt like I retired from doing our breakdowns. It was sad. It was nice because I got a lot done, but at the same time, it's kind of like, all right, well, I make additional money by targeting these fights in addition to my passions, breaking down the fights and providing my analysis with you. And I don't know, I just missed the whole thing. It's fun. So it's something to do on the weekend, and I'm happy to have the UFC back.
Now, of course, let's get right into the fights. Main event is now at 205 pounds. Sean Strickland set up here on about a week's notice to replace Kelvin Gastelum, taking on Nassourdine Imavov. Imavov, 8,700 on DK, 7,700 for Strickland. They're both $19 on FanDuel, but let's talk about the weigh-ins because that to me has got to be a little bit of a talking point with this fight, Pete. The fact is Sean Strickland weighs in at 204 pounds. Imavov weighs in at 194 pounds. And the one thing that I will say that to me really sticks out is the fact of listening and watching a lot of smart people in this business. I think the overall consistent statement is the longer this fight goes, the more it favors Sean Strickland.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's easy to say because we've seen Strickland in 5-round bouts before, and Imavov kind of has that asterisk next to him until he does it. I will say that, it's good that Sean Strickland, when he's training, he's constantly sparring. So I feel like his timing and everything is always, he's always prepared in that aspect. I don't think that he's in the best physical shape. He looks like a guy who's taking weeks off of a fight, which, you can't blame the guy at all. I believe he just got into a motorcycle accident or racked up his bike. This could be a financial decision. But I also think it's just trying to be in the good graces of the UFC. And, I don't necessarily like the short notice nature for Sean Strickland. I think it's pretty evident that Imavov is in next level shape, top level conditioning. I like him with the short notice nature of this bout. If it was a full camp, I would probably be looking at the Sean Strickland side a little bit more. I don't hate the value on Sean Strickland at 7,700. Just because of I think that this could be a patient fight and one that tends to go a little bit later than what we're accustomed to. I actually really like Imavov here. I just think that he's very dangerous. I think he's going to be prepared. He can threaten Sean Strickland in all areas, and Sean Strickland usually has a sneaky wrestling upside in some matchups, despite his love for throwing hands. So with all that being said, I like Imavov here. 8,700 is fine. I'm going to get to him plenty. But it's not like a priority for me. Like I'm not sitting there and locking him in just because I could see this, ending in the third, maybe not even ending at all inside the distance. It just kind of goes, the full 25 minutes. But, my pick is going to be Nassourdine Imavov at 8,700. And it's a vast experienced difference inside the UFC, 4-1 for Imavov, whereas Sean Strickland's 12-5, but I just really like the short notice nature for Imavov here. I think the boxing is going to be competitive, and everything throughout is going to make me lean in Imavov's favor.
I will say this. I think the one concern that I do have in terms of Imavov is a 25-minute aspect. Now, of course, throw a little stat at you. Now, Sean Strickland becomes the second fighter in UFC history to headline back-to-back UFC shows. joining
Crazy.
Tito Ortiz back at UFC 32 and 33. And this is one of those things of, if you're a multiple entry player, this is where I think Imavov may be going undervalued in terms of, I think a lot of people are going to look at Sean Strickland at 7,700 and say, man, Sean Strickland, he's got volume, keeps it on the feet. He can rack up some points at 7,700. So I do think that if you're a player that's more than developing one lineup, you know, say you're getting into a 20 max or maybe a 150 max, whatnot, I think that is a thought process, a game theory to have for this fight card, is the fact of Imavov may go lower owned and you might be able to get a little bit of leverage on the field.
Yeah, I mean, naturally the main events carry more ownership, but I actually think that you're hitting the nail right on the head. Whereas, you know, we're desperate for an underdog for this card, in my opinion. And you just lost probably one of the most popular underdogs in Priscilla Cachoeira, who was going to be everybody's darling against a fighter in Sijara Eubanks, who struggles to make weight, hasn't had good momentum. Whereas, you know, Priscilla Cachoeira has been on such a hot streak lately, touching the chin of all of her opponents. Now we lose her, and she was priced at 7,400. So I think a lot of people are just going to punt in hopes that Sean Strickland can survive and just get some points throughout a 25-minute contest. So I would agree with you that Sean Strickland's probably going to be a little bit more popular than he should be in a situation like this. I'm excited to see the exchanges between the two, to be honest, because Sean Strickland kind of like he baits his opponents into throwing long combinations and kind of has that Philly shell type of style about him. And I want to see Imavov's, you know, light footwork, bouncing in and out, darting in with some long combinations, some explosive right hands. I just can't wait. So it's still going to be Imavov play, but as far as ownership wise, I actually am kind of surprised to see Imavov carrying a little bit lower than what I was anticipating.
Matt, appreciate the comment. He says the Strickland's size and defense going to be tough. We'll say a lot about Imavov if he does last and win. I mean, look, you know, the one thing for Imavov is this is a step up in competition. I mean, the Gastelum fight was a step up in competition for him. That to me is a key with this one. It's a step up in competition from him based on who he's faced. Of course, Sean Strickland has fought the elite of the elite in this 185-pound division. You know, you do kind of wonder the fact of, you know, I want to say he took like 139 significant strikes in his fight against Cherokee and You're coming back a month later. What has training looked like? And, you know, look, he's a guy that loves to spar all the time. So we'll see what happens here. Let's move over to the co-main event. You got Dan Ige taking on Damon Jackson. Dan Ige, 8,400, 7,800 for Damon Jackson, 16 and 14 respectively over there on the FanDuel side of the equation. I had a chance to catch up with Damon Jackson about, I would say about a month ago or so, maybe a little less than that. And, you know, he talked about this is a fight he's been wanting for some time. And, you know, this is one of those matchups where it's like, man, Dan Ige is so tough. And, you know, Damon Jackson, I would call a well-rounded mixed martial artist. You know, I feel like for Dan Ige, he probably views this matchup as a get-right fight. But to me, if Damon Jackson is going to win this fight, Pete, and I'll see whether you agree with me or not, I feel like for him to win this fight, he has to get to the ground.
Yeah, but I think that's going to be really tough against Dan Ige because Dan Ige, he might be better than Damon Jackson on the mat, and that could be a hot take, but I don't believe it is. Dan Ige is fantastic when it comes to grappling. Damon Jackson is more apt to go to that well because he can kind of expose some flaws within most of his opposition, and we saw him do that against several opponents. Where Damon Jackson, you know, the Pat Sabatini knockout kind of threw me for a loop because I thought Sabatini was going to wash him there. But Daniel Argueta, tons of back control, almost submission attempts, scored 79. Kimwella Kirk completely ragdolled him throughout that contest, scored 106. Charles Rosa, too comfortable off of his back, 112. I don't think that's going to happen here against Dan Ige. I really like Dan Ige here. If you look at the names of who he's fought within this division, clearly the better opposition. He's fought everybody. And been very competitive with most of them as well. And I like the power that Dan Ige possesses. I think that he's the more well-rounded of the two. Damon Jackson doesn't look comfortable on the feet. Yes, he can land some combinations and he will throw, but he does not like it when people return fire on him. I think Dan Ige is okay to bite down on a mouthpiece, return fire, land some big shots. If it hits the mat or Damon Jackson looks to take it to the mat, I think Dan Ige is going to be wise enough and skilled enough to defend everything, spin around, take advantage of certain situations. And Dan Ige is going to be a play that I like a lot more than what the field's probably going to like, just because of our desperation for underdogs. So Dan Ige for me at 8,400. I was expecting him to be about 87, 8,800. I like him a lot, and I think that he has some sneaky finish upside here. I actually think that he can knock out Damon Jackson and possibly score pretty well on a slate like this. And the mid range goes overlooked more often than not. Danny Ige is probably going to be one of the names I'm going to circle and say, yeah, I want to get to more of him. As far as a desperation underdog, I mean, I've been wrong on Damon Jackson before. I just really think that, I didn't like what Damon Jackson, how he looked on the scale either. I thought that he really looked like he had a bad weight cut. He seemed to be very, very, very jittery. And it seemed to me like that weight cut really took a lot out of him. And if I'm Dan Ige, I'm digging to the body, as we have seen Ilia Topuria do in the past. So, give me Dan Ige here at 8,400. It might be like a flag planting situation for me, but I like Ige quite a bit.
Yeah, Shine saying thoughts on over under in this fight, which I take he's mentioning about Ige and Jackson. That's not necessarily on the main event here. I mean, look, that over 1.5 is juiced. I mean, I'm seeing minus 335, the best minus 310. I mean, I generally do think that this fight probably is going to go over 1.5 round. Wouldn't shock me if this ultimately goes in being a 3-round fight here, but I like everything you're saying there. But Damon Jackson has proven us wrong. I mean, you bring up the Pat Sabatini fight. Like, that was a fight that just did not expect to see that out of him, and he goes out there and does this. But I mean, look, to me, it's always interesting when I talk to a fighter and they're like, "I've been wanting this fight." And so that makes you go. Now look, how much of that also is you're Damon Jackson. You're trying to get a number next to your name. You look at Dan Ige. Dan Ige's lost 3 in a row. Of course, it's against top competition. So that to me is something to think about here. So I don't mind getting to Damon Jackson. Like, if you tell me, like, if I'm playing a single lineup, I would much rather get to Dan Ige than I would want to get to Damon Jackson. But over on the FanDuel side of the equation, if you don't like Dan Ige to win by stoppage, I don't know if I really like this fight over on FanDuel.
Yeah, move on. And I'm just kind of projecting that Ige is going to be a little bit tougher than what Damon Jackson is expecting in this matchup. There's good value on Jackson, and he's a fighter that kind of overperforms. So, like, you can't really project that. Whereas step up in competition against Pat Sabatini, threw a nice front kick into the combination and knocked them out. And I just didn't expect that because Pat Sabatini's grappling style. So anyways, I hold Pat Sabatini in such high regard. And I just think that Dan Ige's tough. He's not scary. And that's probably why Damon Jackson has been eyeing this matchup. You want to go up against tough guys. It takes a certain type of person to sign that dotted line against a scary opponent. But Jackson did sign that fight against Ilia Topuria, who has proven to be a complete monster within the division. So I just think that Damon Jackson kind of looks at some fighters who he's fought and said, Dan Ige is not nearly as scary as those guys. And I would agree. But I just think that he's a very, very tough out. And this could be a nice little bounce back spot for Ige, who's on a 3-fight skid. Like, we can't mention that enough, against Chan Sung Jung, Josh Emmett, and most recently against Movsar Evloev. 3 studs within a division.
Yeah, he has not gotten any easy fight. Looking at some of the prop bets over there. First of all, we'll talk on prize picks. So we got 2 props on Dan Ige. Significant strikes, 57.5. Fantasy score, 76.5. I kind of like the more on both of those equations. I would say this, and I'm not a big fantasy score player over at Prize Picks, but I feel like that's the juicier option if you're looking to play Dan Ige.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I think that a couple combinations could actually make Jackson crumble, but the fantasy score for how I'm seeing this fight go, mid 80s at least. But for DraftKings, you don't really know if that's going to be enough. But for a fantasy score prop, I actually like the more on both of those. So the more for the significant strikes depends on how much Damon Jackson wants to grapple or how much this is a grappling and scrambling fest. So I'd be with you. I'd much rather get to the fantasy score than the significant strikes.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of that one. Did see the comment about the audio level. We'll make those adjustments as we do go on. We're a 2-man show over here. We're a 2-man show over. We don't, and by the way, over on Underdog, Danny gave 56.5 as well. So I would say this. I would be more interested on the significant strikes playing more 56.5, but I think over on Prize Picks, I'd rather attack that fantasy score of 76.5. Let's move over to the next matchup. Got a middleweight matchup. One of these guys, I just feel like I could never get his fight right for the most part. That's Punahele Soriano taking on Roman Kopylov. Soriano 8,500, 7,700 for Kopylov, and 1713 respectively over there. Of course, both guys did make weight here earlier on today. Puna was at 185.5, Kopylov at 185, and Pete, Puna is just one of those guys that you look at and you see the power. And if you go back to his Contender Series fight, we saw the wrestling, but he wore down as that fight went on, which is always kind of like, if I'm thinking about the question marks of Punahele Soriano, to me is if he doesn't get Kopylov out in 7.5 minutes or under, is that cardio there? And I think the one fight I'd really turn to is that Brandon Allen fight a couple years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's admittedly, there are some fights on this card where I'm still torn. This is one of them. For most of the card, I feel pretty confident in my picks and my plays. For this one, I'm going to have some split exposure. Obviously, we're desperate for underdogs. We could have a week where we have a losing fighter a part of the optimal lineup. That's kind of like what I'm feeling this week. It could be a weird week. But Roman Kopylov sitting there at 7,700 is going to be a guy with some late finish upside or a possible decision win. You have two explosive athletes, but Punahele Soriano is much more explosive and powerful than Roman Kopylov. Kopylov is more like the more consistent of the two. He's steadier output. Punahele Soriano throws big damaging strikes, has nice takedowns whenever he wants to go to that well. And I actually think that's probably the easiest path to victory here against Roman Kopylov is just blending it. Blend everything. Don't just get into an absolute slugfest. Don't fight emotionally. Go out there, throw big combinations. If Kopylov starts to return fire, starts to really step forward a little bit too aggressively, change levels, put him on his back, look towards taking his back, because Roman Kopylov, almost was submitted against Albert Duraev, who's a phenomenal grappling expert. Even Carl Roberson was able to submit Roman Kopylov in the third round by taking him down, taking his back, and working towards a rear naked choke. I just think that Punahele Soriano's wrestling is much more powerful than Carl Roberson. Albert Duraev, I thought should have got the finish in round 2. Was very, very close to getting it done. But Kopylov, kind of bounced back against Alessio Di Chirico and put together a very nice performance and won in the third round. So when I'm split and I'm torn on a fight like this, Punahele Soriano has the power edge, worried about his cardio. Outside the Brendan Allen fight, like Brendan Allen and the Nick Maximov, who's just a relentless wrestler, I've liked him in every single bout. The Oscar Pajota, Dusko Todorovic, Dolce Lungo Mula, I love his ability to get a finish. I am going to lean towards Punahele Soriano because of his gym. And that's kind of what I do is if it's a close fight and I'm having a difficult time, I look into what gym they're training out of, who they're training with. And Punahele Soriano is going to get that extreme couture lean for me. I'm going to lean in his direction. But with all that being said, I'm going to get to Roman Kopylov. I'm going to get to a lot of these underdogs. But from a betting perspective, I'm going to be targeting Punahele Soriano. I think that he has some sneaky finishing upside. And if he kind of just makes this a more consistent and less explosive performance, I think this can be a very easily won fight. It's just a matter of going out there and putting it together under the lights.
Yeah, we're looking over at the prop bets on this one in terms of we're talking about Prize Picks or we're talking about underdog. 47.5 significant strikes for Soriano. Fight time 11 minutes. I think that's kind of an interesting fight time number, Pete. Because I generally think that if Soriano wins this fight, it's likely probably by stoppage within 10 minutes. Fantasy score 85.5, and then over at Underdog, you just have significant strikes at 46.5 for Puna Soriano. Any of those stick out to you?
I mean, the fight time anytime Puna Soriano is out there, it's like the way that he fights at 11.5 is completely wrong. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy because he goes out there and he just throws caution to the wind. Um, but Eric Nixick, Extreme Couture, if if Punahele Soriano wants to make a run towards the title, you have to go out there and be a little bit more methodical, slow it down, slow the pace down. So um, I have a sneaky suspicion that this is going to touch the later rounds, but I think it could be a late round 2 stoppage. So I don't know if I would target anything there. Nothing's really sticking out to me other than just blindly going with Punahele Soriano. Under 1.5 is basically always the play for a Puna play.
Yeah, I mean, as I think about Soriano here, I'm looking at that potential of if he does get some takedowns, could rack up some points. And of course, especially when we're talking about the DraftKings side of the equation, we're always talking about looking for those fighters to have the ability to rack up some points with those takedowns. Let's move over. Next up, we got a female matchup. Ketlen Vieira taking on Raquel Pennington. Ketlen Vieira 8,200, 8,000 for Raquel Pennington, 17 and 14 here. Pete, I do not like this matchup for DFS. I mean, to me, this has got 15-minute low volume, winner gets 75 points.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really think it's a, fantasy friendly matchup, but because of the salary, I'm kind of like forced to play it. I'm getting to Raquel Pennington from an underdog standpoint just because of her momentum. She's on a 4-fight win streak over Marion Renault, Pani Kianzad, Macy Chasson, and Aspen Ladd. I mean, she's on one hell of a tear right now. And Ketlen Vieira is a fighter that I hold with higher upside than Raquel Pennington, but within that upside, there is some inconsistency. I mean, she dropped a decision to Yana Kunitskaya, who she was dominating up until like the final 45 seconds of round 3. And then, Yana just put it on her for like the final 30 seconds, and then that definitely swayed the judges. But she should be on a 4-fight win streak as well over Sijara Eubanks, Yana Kunitskaya, Miesha Tate, and Holly Holm. I hold the grappling of Ketlen Vieira in higher regard than Raquel Pennington, but this could be like a wall and stall, reversing position, lots of clinch, lots of cage control, weird decision that we're all kind of scratching our head about. I'm going to be favoring Ketlen Vieira here at 8,200, but I kind of view these like 1A, 1B, whatever fits within my lineup I'm going to get to, just because it's a close fight, right? Like Raquel Pennington's look really good. Definitely fought some top competition. She's 11-5 in the UFC. Ketlen Vieira is 7-2. And we did see her get knocked out against Irene Aldana. So how is her chin when she's aggressive? Can she get countered? Yes, she can get countered. I just think that Irene Aldana's boxing is next level. So I kind of view Ketlen Vieira as 8-1 in the UFC. And this is a fighter that when she puts it all together, she has good throws, good takedowns, great top control. And what I saw from Raquel Pennington is, she throws knees a lot in the clinch, and sometimes those knees can be caught and she can get taken down, as Aspen Ladd took her down. And I do think that Ketlen Vieira is much heavier on top and can work towards a submission. So give me Ketlen Vieira to win a decision at 8,200. Don't really love it from a fantasy standpoint, but I got to get to it because of the salary.
I'm glad that you brought up the takedown potential of Ketlen Vieira, because as I look at the props over Prize Picks, that 1.5 number on Ketlen Vieira is a number that does stick out to me. I do like going the more there. Significant strikes 46.5. If you're going to play one side or the other, I'd probably go more. The 70.5 number when it comes to fantasy score, I really don't want to touch over there. Then over an underdog, her significant strikes is 46.5, takedowns 1.5. I would tell you that I like the more on both of those equations.
Yeah, so I don't think it's going to be easy to take down Raquel Pennington, because when you shoot traditional double legs or anything against the cage, Raquel Pennington does the correct things. She fights for underhooks. She's able to get a good whizzer, pull her opponent up, reverse position, and then start to employ a good clinch striking type of fight. But I do think that Ketlen Vieira possesses some unorthodox takedowns, some judo-esque takedowns, lots of trips, lots of uchimatas into chaining an uchimata into a double leg or uchimata into an ankle pick. So I really like Ketlen Vieira's skill set. Like when I look at the two, I see a higher ceiling for Ketlen Vieira, whereas I think Raquel Pennington is just like the little engine that could. She's just steady. If you don't put her away, she's going to be in your face. She's going to make it a difficult night. And if you aren't up to a 15-minute war, she can steal a decision over you. I do think that Ketlen Vieira is going to be ready for this opportunity. And, we have to remember that Miesha Tate looked phenomenal. And then she fought Ketlen Vieira, and Ketlen Vieira looked pretty damn good and just kind of outclassed her. So I do think that Ketlen Vieira is going to get the W here at 8,200.
It's taken us 5 fights to get to the first fighter that's over $9,000, and that is Umar Nurmagomedov. He is 9,300. He's taking on Hani Barcelos at 6,900, and then over on FanDuel, $23 for Nurmagomedov, $8 for Hani Barcelos. Pete, obviously Hani Barcelos, a longtime vet in the sport, but Umar, man, this is a guy that a lot of people believe has potential to be a UFC champion within the next 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, first off, let me just say that Umar Nurmagomedov is my favorite fighter under Khabib, under AKA. Like, I love him. I think that for me personally, he has the highest upside of everybody. His skill set in the striking department, in the wrestling department, is just next level. With that being said, what the heck are these odds? What the heck are these odds? This is ridiculous. And it's completely inflated because of the last name, Nurmagomedov, just the popularity of him and everybody within the Khabib Nurmagomedov team. 6,900 for Hani Barcelos, like minus 600, minus 700 for Umar Nurmagomedov, almost minus 1,000 right now for Umar Nurmagomedov. I get it, but like Hani Barcelos is nasty. There was a time I thought Hani Barcelos was going to be within the top 5, challenging for the title, possibly winning it because he's a fantastic jiu-jitsu competitor. He has very good boxing, very good wrestling. And then it kind of seemed like, what happened to him? It's almost like he got deflated a little bit within the UFC and lost a majority decision to Timur Valiev, who very inconsistent inside the UFC, but phenomenally skilled. Then lost a follow-up decision to Victor Henry. And I'm like, what the heck? Was I over-projecting Hani Barcelos? I really don't think I was. I mean, he has a win over Said Nurmagomedov, Khalid Taha, Chris Gutierrez, some decent names. But when you look and you watch him fight, you're like, this guy has championship potential. The issue is that I do think that Umar Nurmagomedov is going to get this done. I think standing up, he's too tricky. His kicks are probably going to be the reason he picks up this win over Hani Barcelos, because Hani's very comfortable in the boxing department. But if you start throwing relentless kicks, question mark kicks, round kicks to the head, I think he's going to catch Hani Barcelos with one of these. I really do. Not to mention that Umar Nurmagomedov possesses phenomenal wrestling that will test Hani Barcelos, and I actually think that he will be the better wrestler of the two. So I like Umar Nurmagomedov to win this fight. It's just like 6,900 for one of the most talented fighters within this division. Yeah, he may be washed a little bit, but this is a complete punt play where I'm going to be playing Hani Barcelos, not expecting him to win. Mm-hmm. He could win, but it's just a salary play where it's like, yeah, I think this is going to be a competitive 3-round fight. If he gets me 40 points, 50 points in a loss, I'm okay with that. Like, he scored 59 against Victor Henry, 52 against Timur Valiev. You know what I mean? Like, 6,900 allows you to get to everything. And I still think Umar Nurmagomedov is going to get this done. I have some lineups with Umar Nurmagomedov, but the price with the finishing potential, I'm probably going to go a little bit lighter in the 9,000 range just because I like the finishing equity of some of those other fighters.
Brad mentions in the chat, he says these odds are way too wide, yep, but Umar still wins. So I was just I was looking at the prop bets while you were talking about this. The over 1.5 rounds minus 455.
It kind of think about it like that, right? Like, yeah, you can simplify it like that. Like, the over, we want 9,000 fighters to get an early first round, maybe second round finish, or a complete domination. For me, I just think of, and I kind of foresee how this fight's going to go. And I'm like, I think he's just overpriced. Like he should be the A side, but as far as like DFS score, I don't think it's going to justify the salary.
I mean, just look at the finishing props here. Barcelos wins by TKO KO plus 1,600. Nurmagomedov wins via TKO KO plus 650. Barcelos wins via submission. We all know Hani Barcelos has got that submission plus 2,800. And Nurmagomedov via decision plus 300. Now, I do look at that takedown prop over at Underdog and Prize Picks, both at 2.5. Like, to me, if I'm going to play that, I'd much rather play the more than the less of 2.5 there. But I do like Umar should win this matchup, but it's just from a DFS perspective, it's like, okay, we're chasing to get to 650, 700 points over on DraftKings. Okay. If you're building your lineup around Umar, the mindset's got to be is A, we need to finish, and B, we need some takedowns.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes a much more competitive opponent brings out the best of somebody. But I will say that Umar Nurmagomedov only scored 104 against Nate Maness. I don't think Nate Maness is good. I have never thought
you're the president of that fan club. I know you are.
I've always said that about him. But Umar Nurmagomedov scored 3 of 4 takedowns in that bout, landed 74 significant strikes, had 10 minutes of control time, did not finish Nate Maness. So for me, from a prop betting standpoint, I expect Umar Nurmagomedov to win 2 rounds. I think that I'm going to put money on Umar Nurmagomedov to win a decision. I might even look at the draw. I might even say that this could be a weird fight because Hani Barcelos could actually make this competitive. So I'm going to go that Umar Nurmagomedov wins a decision, and I just don't think it's the best salary play at 9,300.
And by the way, that Umar Nurmagomedov wins by decision prop minus 200. Tristan asking if we like the Umar over 91.5 fantasy score.
I mean, I do like Umar Nurmagomedov. I mean, he scored 104 over Nate Maness, 3-round decision, 105 at Kelleher, first-round submission, 111 over Sergey Morozov. I expect him to get in the 90s. Yes. I think it's close, though, Tristan.
And Brandon mentioned, he goes, Umar is going to have a lot of ownership. Barcelos, 93% takedown defense. I mean, look, part of that with Barcelos, too, is you're going to have a lot of fighters who are going to go in there with a game plan of let's not engage in grappling with Hani Barcelos because but obviously Umar very talented when it comes to the ground aspect as well. Let's move over to the next matchup. We got Claudio Ribeiro taking on Abdul Razak Alhassan. Alhassan 8,300, Ribeiro 7,900, both $15 on FanDuel, which that becomes a very interesting play over there on the FanDuel side of the equation. Alhassan is a guy that you love because of the power, but he has burned me in some situations, Pete.
Oh my God. As he burned us. Now, guess what? I said that there was a fight that I was very torn on, and that's the Soriano, Roman Kopylov. I'm leaning towards Soriano. The next fight that I've been back and forth with is this Claudio Ribeiro, Abdul Razak Alhassan fight. 8,300 for Alhassan, Ribeiro at 7,900. If this is standing up, I think that Claudio Ribeiro is just so wild and so aggressive that he will touch the chin of Abdul Razak Alhassan and knock him out, because I just remember Chaos Williams putting Alhassan into a different dimension. And Chaos Williams hits really hard, but if you go back and you look at a lot of his regional tape and a lot of his regional resume, it's a lot of decisions. So when he came and he starched Alhassan, it's like, holy moly. Now you're going up against Claudio Ribeiro, who has a ton of finishes, throws excellent boxing combinations. The issue with Ribeiro is he's a complete liability in the takedown department. If you go back and you watch his regional tape, his takedown defense is terrible. Abdul Razak Alhassan actually, in his previous performance against Joaquin Buckley, who hits really hard as well, landed a couple takedowns. So he landed 3 of 4 takedowns, had about 3 minutes of control time. And I do think that that's an interesting wrinkle because Abdul Razak Alhassan comes from a very, very good judo background. He's a good judoka athlete, but he fell in love with his hands. We see this often where certain fighters start to fall in love with the power and knocking people out, and they don't become well-rounded mixed martial artists. Now, I'm not expecting Alhassan to become a D1 wrestler by any means. But what I do think that you can do is expose a clear deficiency within somebody's game. So I want to pick the plain under in this matchup because I do think that it's going to occur more often than not. Alhassan could clearly knock out Ribeiro by, finding something a little bit sharper down the middle, whereas Ribeiro is super wide. But I actually think that the strategy here, a part of team elevation, is just to be tight, defensively and make this ugly and chain some takedowns together because Ribeiro's takedown defense is horrible. Absolutely horrible. This is a coin flip fight for me because like Alhassan's work rate and his gas tank probably won't allow him to perform a strategy like that or a game plan like that. I'm going to be leaning in Alhassan's favor as much as I want to pick Ribeiro via knockout. Ribeiro is probably going to be one of my most exposed underdogs on the slate just because if he wins, I'm expecting a 100-point performance and he's going to be talked about because of that ridiculous power. But I have to, give Alhassan some props and look at everybody who he's fought. Nico Price, Munir Lazez, Chaos Williams, Jacob Malkoun, Joaquin Buckley, Alessio De Chirico, Sabah Hamasi. So like I'm going to be picking Alhassan here. But this is a complete GPP priority fight. I don't know if I'll get away from it, to be honest.
Yeah, Shine saying playing the under 1.5 round here with the fingers crossed. Brand goes, no idea who to pick here, but this fight is likely optimal. Yeah, I mean, that's as I was kind of thinking about the fighting style here. And I mean, look, if you go over and you look at those prize picks props, Pete, fight time on Alhassan is 5 minutes. So that tells you, people who are setting lines, what they kind of feel of this fight. The significant strikes for Alhassan, 36.5, fantasy score 75.5, and looking over on Underdog, significant strikes for Alhassan, 34.5. And over at Underdog, they have finishes, and they have that as a half. So whether you may think that's going to win by a finish or not here, but it's a fight to me you got to prioritize because I think the likely scenario is someone's getting finished here.
Yeah, I mean, Alhassan used to be a round one or bust guy, and then you run into a guy in Munir Lazez who's able to take so many shots and stretch out the fight. And then you run into a complete nightmare of a matchup against Jacob Malkoun, and then you just went the full 15 minutes against Joaquin Buckley, in addition to training at elevation now. I think it's only going to help him. Like, I really do think it's only going to help him. You want his aggressiveness, especially in your lineups, but I actually think that there's more unknown surrounding Ribeiro, clearly. So I'm just going to put a little bit of faith in Alhassan that his experience is going to win out here in a very, very close but optimal fight.
Of course, appreciate everyone tuning in here for our preview of UFC Vegas 67. Be sure to join our Discord, totally free to join. Appreciate Connor, Sean, y'all just some of the most recent members of our Discord channel. So you can check that right in the description below to join our Discord channel. Also, you can check out our friends over at Stochastic as they do have an offer for our listeners. And of course, when you click those links, take advantage of it. You're helping support myself and Pete over here at Fight HQ. We will be here tomorrow on Saturday as well, 3 p.m. Eastern time, so 1 hour before UFC Vegas 67 starts, and that'll be pretty much just a straight Q&A session, and then of course we'll talk a little game theory and how we're developing our lineups, look at some prop bets that we like as well, and of course, as I always say, if there's anything you want to hear me and Pete talk about, be sure to hit us up, because I'm just going to tell you, the next matchup, Pete, your Northeast scene is a little under fire on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complete resume mismatch because Mateusz Rebecki against Nick Fiore. Nick Fiore's strength of schedule doesn't actually show how talented he is, and I will back him up. He's very good. You don't think Nick Fiore's good?
I like the grappling, but here's the problem. Okay, we both know this Northeast scene, Pete.
Correct.
Why are you fighting Jay Ellis twice?
Yeah. Yeah, I
that's
mean, listen,
enough. Pete. Okay, I've got no problem on the regional scene of you getting the right fights. Come on, man, you should not be fighting Jay Ellis twice.
Yeah, I mean, once is bad enough.
You can't even defend that. It could be Nick. Could be if Nick was in your gym, you'd be sitting there going, I mean, come on. I mean, I did get a press release on a promotion having a 1-0 guy fight a guy who's having his 30th fight and has a winning record.
I saw that.
I was just say I made a phone call today, and I basically said, "What the hell is going on in Maine?"
Yeah, Maine's like the Wild West. And
no, and who in the corner of the fighter who's 1-0 is telling him this is a good fight to take?
I don't know. It's very foolish.
This sport is about the best way I can describe it. This sport.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like you got some people that not everybody's a good coach, but a lot of fighters turn into coaches. And a lot of them just like a lot of fighters that turn into coaches don't know how to teach, never mind know how to manage. MMA is the most mismanaged sport there is. It is.
Great point.
Think about it.
Great point.
It's the most mismanaged sport there is. You got people that don't have financial knowledge, managing tons of things. You have people that basically just have fight experience. And I do think that there needs to be, that's why you're a coach. I get it. But there also needs to be smarter legal people with financial backgrounds to help you out or legal experience to basically make sure that you're not putting yourself into a terrible spot. This fight against Mateusz Rebecki and Nick Fiore, massive experience advantage for Rebecki. He's fought top-level competition. His striking is much better than Nick Fiore, and his grappling is very good. I won't say his grappling's much better than Nick Fiore because I actually think that Nick Fiore's jiu-jitsu is fantastic. I have to tell you, I think it's absolutely fantastic. He works to the back against most of his opposition. Striking is still kind of like learning on the job. A part of the New England cartel, you know that they're going to be prepared. And I do think that Nick Fiore has helped Calvin Kattar a ton throughout his camps, in addition to Rob Font, everybody within that stable. I just think that this is just, we got you in the UFC. You got to do what you got to do sometimes. When the UFC calls, this is how you get in. And the fights after this are basically how you make your mark on the sport. But it's a very tough one. It really is a tough one. Rebecki, outside of getting completely exhausted in this matchup, shouldn't lose this fight. But I will tell you that if Nick Fiore goes out there and gets Rebecki down, he could get us some points at 6,800, kind of similar to Raoni Barcelos, and nobody's going to play him. So I'm going to play him just because I just need a losing fighter. Like, who's the guy a couple weekends ago? Kozlo, was it? Where I had him and I ended up taking down the tournament because, he got so many takedowns and so much control within the first round that when he had nothing left in rounds 2 and 3, I still was able to basically create a unique lineup because of that construction. So I'm going to, approach this fight the same. I think that Rebecki's salary reflects what it should. I'm expecting a 100-point performance. Nick Fiore is just a complete dart throw for me, and fantastic jiu-jitsu guy. But we'll have to see how the scrambles look between these two. I just think that Rebecki's going to be the stronger, more physically imposing of the two en route to a TKO finish.
Yeah, I mean, look, the grappling you love of Nick, and I'll tell you that I'll relate this. I did an interview yesterday with Don Shanis, who's going to be a part of the pay-per-view there in Perth, and did bring up the question about where he's training, since he had been at Glory. He's back in Northeast and going to a collection of gyms up there in the Northeast. But he was talking about, because you remember he stepped up on extremely short notice to get in the UFC, and he said, he goes, look, I didn't know if that call was ever going to come again. He said, so he goes, that's kind of the tough side of this industry is if you get that call to be in the UFC, you don't want to say no because you never know if that call is going to come back again. By the way, I was looking over at Tapology. Is Jay Ellis retired?
I have no idea.
Jay Ellis has not fought since August of 2022. This is very unlike Jay Ellis.
That is very true. I mean, who knows? There comes a point in time where you're dodging which commissions are going to approve you. But to kind of go and piggyback off of your point where Shanis was saying he never knew if that phone call was going to come. I mean, it wasn't for the UFC, but for me, it was Bellator. I mean, I got the phone call. I was 22 years old. I was just learning MMA. I was a kickboxer for my whole life and a karate competitor for my whole life. And I got an opportunity for Bellator, and I just saw Nick Pace, throw a flying knee and knock out this kid. And then in Bellator, I'm like, man, I got to get into this. So I started doing it. And the opportunity was there, and my dad and I had a conversation. It was like, yeah, we don't know if this is ever going to come again. Hindsight, little did I know that Uncasville, Connecticut was going to be like the hot spot for Bellator MMA, and they were going to come and return all the time, because I should have never made my debut. But everything happens for a reason in a way, because then it really made me kind of like focus on my weaknesses and everything. But I mean, I had 0 MMA fights or 0 anything, and I went against the number 1 amateur in New England. So for me, that was a mistake in hindsight, but also it kind of got me in the door. And now, like, Bellator and I have a good relationship, and I've done some pretty cool things for Bellator, not at the UFC level, but it's kind of similar. So I do think that a situation like that is where you just need to be patient. Patience in this game is rare, and sometimes patience pays off. Look at Yuri Prochazka. He had the most patient approach there is, and then now he captured the gold. I wish he didn't get injured, but he did it right, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you recall, he talked about that the call to UFC came prior, but he felt he wasn't ready, so he wasn't going to go in there. Yep. And I mean, like, look, to kind of give people a little peek behind the walls of some of the conversations that me and Pete have had, because of me being around this industry and talking to managers and talking to regional matchmakers, I understand the regional side. And me and Pete have had these conversations about the proper way to work your record, the proper way in taking the right steps. That's why, like, there's times on the regional scene where you see a fighter, and I know a lot of people, and it's very easy to crap on a fighter when they're maybe taking on lesser known competition, but there's a method to the madness. And at some point, yes, you have to take that step up in competition. The problem is for me with Nick, I mean, this is a major step up in competition, but you know what? Maybe he's going to come in, and you mentioned about great jiu-jitsu. He's just got to get it there. That to me is the biggest question. Samuel, appreciate you checking in. Of course, if you want to always keep it in line what's going on with Fight HQ, join our Discord. Link is below. Let's move over. Next up, we got a matchup in the 135-pound division. Both these fighters did make weight today. Javid Basharat, another one of our 9,000 fighters, 9,200, $18 over on FanDuel. What's your thoughts here on the favorite here?
I love Basharat. I absolutely love him. I think this is one of the most difficult debuts that you can have, next to Nick Fiore against Mateusz Rebecki. The only thing is Rebecki hasn't had a fight inside the UFC, so octagon jitters, you never know. You don't think so from a fighter within his caliber. But like what we've seen from Javid Basharat, he's ridiculous. Picking up a win over Trevin Jones and Tony Gravely. This guy out of Extreme Couture has a karate type of footwork approach, excellent striking, phenomenal takedown defense, submission defense. He's just well-rounded. I literally look at this guy, Jason, and I say he could challenge for the belt. He is that damn good. And I do think that Mateusz Mendonca is very good, hits really hard. There is some tape out there where he tires if he doesn't find the finish, has really, really heavy hands. Guess who had heavy hands, though? Tony Gravely. Tony Gravely has very heavy hands, and just the footwork and movement and work rate of Basharat kind of broke him throughout the contest, and it was a decisive victory. I'm going to be planting my flag on Javid Basharat this week, where, as you know, if Nick Fiore had a less experienced opponent, I'd probably be getting to Nick Fiore a lot. If Mendonca had a less experienced opponent than Javid Basharat, I'd be getting to him a lot. But I'll tell you what, I just think Javid Basharat's fantastic. So I'm planting my flag. He hasn't picked up a finish yet. I think the cardio concerns that I have for Mendonca is going to equate to a Basharat inside the distance play. And at 9,200, I think that he has that slate breaking potential. He hasn't done it yet. Scored 65 against Trevin Jones, 82 against Tony Gravely. But if a guy tires and is only a round one hero, and you can go out there and outwork him and punish him every which way, I could see 100 points in his future. So I'm going to go with Javid Basharat here. pretty heavily at 9,200. Just has to avoid the big power of Mendonca.
As we look over the prop bets, first over at Prize Picks, they're all on boss right here. Significant strike 72.5, fight time 12.5, takedowns 1.5, fantasy score is 105.5. There's nothing available when it comes to underdog fantasy. But Pete, as we look at those prop bets over there at Prize Picks with Basharat, any of them stick out to you?
What was the takedown prop?
1.5.
Yeah, that's more. That's more. Just because I think what's going to happen is Mendonca is going to throw heavy combinations, and Basharat's going to change levels, take him down, going to get back up. He's going to start beating up Mendonca, and then just kind of just like beating him up so bad that his combinations are going to make him crash distance, and it's going to lead to another takedown en route to a finish. So yeah, I'm going to say he gets 2 takedowns. So yeah, Basharat, I love the fantasy score because that's kind of what I'm envisioning here. 9,200, I love it. And this is a guy in Mendonca who kind of looks like Figueiredo a little bit with the skill set, good jiu-jitsu and good power. I just don't think that it's going to happen in this matchup. A very, very tough debut.
You know, when I'm talking about developing single lineups, whether we're talking about GPP or cash, like for cash, Basharat may be a core play for me.
Yeah, I love it because that's where my head's at this week. And I like the discount, right? Like Rebecki's going to have some heavy ownership. I'm expecting him to get a finish. Umar Nurmagomedov is going to have ridiculous ownership. Don't really know if his fantasy score is going to justify it. I think Basharat has that sneaky. Nobody wants to get to him because he's 9,000, hasn't found a finish yet.
Yeah, I mean that's just one guy's and that's to me when, especially when I'm developing cash lineups, I'm always like saying, okay, who do I have have a ton of confidence in? Samuel asking how many fights now. We are now down to 11. So, he's got to work on his over-under number. Let's see how well he does over here at Fight HQ with his over-under number. I feel like we're just going to keep track of Samuel. So by the time we get to December, we have like how good of a over-under finish number does Samuel put out there on a Friday afternoon?
That'd be pretty fun. That would definitely be pretty fun. And appreciate you checking us out, Sam. Appreciate everybody checking us out, really. I mean, you guys just showing your support for us over the years has been phenomenal. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join the Discord, which is linked below inside of the description. Free to join. Just hang out with us. Talk about the fights. We'll talk about plays and changes of opinion if there is any at any time. And it's just like a nice group of people already, which is kind of fantastic, and we're super appreciative.
Yeah, and of course, we're going to have a ton of content over here at Fight HQ as we get into Bellator. Of course, they kick off back here at the beginning of February. They got a big show. We'll do some coverage for that one. Of course, PFL, the Challenger Series, is starting up here, I want to say 2 weeks from today, I want to say is when they kick off that Challenger Series. So PFL will be right back into the equation. They're making some news. And look, PFL, Bellator both made some great signings this week. Or last week, I should say, with PFL signing Jake Paul. Whether I know Pete may not be the biggest Jake Paul, but for PFL, it's a great signing, and for Bellator, re-signing AJ McKee, that's a very huge signing, and looks like we're getting AJ McKee, Patricky Pitbull.
Yeah,
that is kudos Bellator. I talked about it on my podcast on Wednesday, and this was before they started kind of revealing the matchups. I go, that's the matchup you make. You have the storyline, and then maybe that leads us to that trilogy matchup of Patricio and AJ.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So, that's but of course, you got any questions, line those up in chat. We'll get through those as we get to the end of the show. Let's move over next up. We got Nascimento taking on Hernandez. Look at the salaries here. Nascimento, 9,100, 7,100 for Hernandez, and then 20 and 11 respectively over there on FanDuel. Which take, Pete?
Yeah. So, I mean, Carlos Hernandez coming from a friend of mine's gym in Mike Valley, Coach Mike, and Coach Mike has really developed a great gym, Valley Flow system. So Valley Flow striking. I really do think that Carlos Hernandez is good. I just think that Alan Nascimento is really damn good. Pretty big for the division. Excellent jiu-jitsu. Sneaky takedowns as well. And whenever you get a victory over Jake Hadley, it's pretty evident that you are legitimate. Jake Hadley's good and looked good in his return fight. You can out-control, outmaneuver, and out-scramble Jake Hadley and get 9 minutes of control time. I do think that you can control Carlos Hernandez, and I want to root for my boy's friend, for my boy's fighter, and Carlos Hernandez. On the feet, I think is his best way to win, is just outpointing Alan Nascimento, defending takedowns en route to a decision. So I'll be getting to Hernandez a little bit for a decision upside. I don't think that he's going to have a strategy based on taking his opponent down as he has done in the past. He attempted 9 takedowns over Victor Altamirano. I just think you're playing with fire if you start to go on the mat with Alan Nascimento coming from Diego Lima, shoot the box. So I have to tell you that Nascimento can take the back really well. And on the Contender Series, we saw Carlos Hernandez get taken down multiple times, tons of times, and get his back taken. And a guy of Nascimento's jiu-jitsu caliber, I think, can actually make a submission happen, whereas other opponents were unable to. So I definitely think that Nascimento's in a sneaky spot. His work rate is what's a little bit worrisome for the salary, where it's like scored 20 over Takir Ulanbekov in a loss. Okay. Scored 83 despite a decisive win over Jake Hadley. If he doesn't get the finish, or even if he does, it's kind of like a low volume fight from Nascimento. So I'm expecting Nascimento to get the win. I just don't know if I love him more than Javid Basharat or Rebecki. I think I like those two a little bit more. But Nascimento is pretty sneaky. He can definitely pick up a rear naked choke quickly, but I'm going to project that it doesn't happen as some of the other ones happen a little bit better with better fantasy scores.
And Spencer, appreciate you checking us out. Yeah, we'll be doing our breakdowns. Me and Pete, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here. We'll be here on Fridays of fight weeks, and then we're going to be doing a show on Saturday, Q&A. So get those last minute questions, 1 hour. Don't know about what kind next week, just because, well, depends on what happens on Monday night with me. So we'll know whether or not we'll be here next Saturday, but that is the plan for us to be here and break down all these fights for you. So we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll talk about Samuel's over under number here in a little bit. Next up, we got another matchup that was a fight change, as this was initially supposed to be Dan Argueta taking on Isaac Dulgarian. Dulgarian pulls out of the fight, and Nick Aguilar pulls into here. He's 7,300. Dan is 8,600 and 21-9 over here on FanDuel. Dan was the last guy to step on the scale today.
You ready for my hot take?
Okay, all right. What is the Pete hot take here?
Hot take, 5 days notice, Nick Aguirre submits Dan Argueta. And the reason I'll say that is I don't think a lot of people are going to be building lineups with that to happen. Dan Argueta is going to be a massive favorite. And Dan Argueta is a true bantamweight, to be honest. True bantamweight. And he's going to carry massive ownership here. I think that it at featherweight, he's taken a fight at featherweight in the past against Damon Jackson, but like the short notice nature of that, he likes to wrestle. And in his fight film, if I was coaching Nick Aguirre, I'm telling you, he leaves his neck out there so often, where he just bullies everything. He bullies everything. And he leaves his neck out there, and certain jiu-jitsu practitioners are hunting necks. Nick Aguirre hunts the neck so well. I don't know how often Nick Aguirre's been training. If this was a full camp, I'd probably be going towards Nick Aguirre heavily, just because he has true featherweight experience. Despite the lack of Ultimate Fighter experience, I actually think that this kid's jiu-jitsu is slick. I think his jiu-jitsu is so slick that even if he's not as mature as an MMA fighter as Dan Argueta is, it really takes one mistake, whether it's a guillotine, a darce, or anaconda choke, or even if he gets put on his back, he throws up a good, very, very good triangle. He competes in grappling all the time. He's surrounded by good fighters at Valley Flow. So, like, under Coach Mike, again, I know this might be a little bit of a homer pick, but I don't think anybody's going to be projecting to get to Nick Aguirre at all. And we just lost Priscilla Cachoeira. So why wouldn't I take a shot on a guy who's going to come in single-digit ownership with a fantastic jiu-jitsu skill set? As this fight gets stretched out, though, I do worry that Dan Argueta is going to TKO him. I have to tell you, Dan Argueta just brings a motor, and that motor can break anybody. Good wrestlers can ragdoll you, pick you up, take you down repeatedly. I worry about that, but I'm just telling you that I don't think anybody's going to be expecting a Nick Aguirre submission. And I already put some money on it. I believe it was plus 1,200 or something silly like that. So super wide for a kid with his best path to victory. That's his only path to victory here over Dan Argueta. And, it's a hot take, but it's something that I'm going to be building my lineups around just because, we don't know who can have a bad, weight cut. And Argueta stepping on the scale, you said last, could mean something.
Yeah, very well. Looking over at the props on this one, 45.5 significant strikes for Dan. Fight time, 14 3/4, 1.5 takedowns for Dan, and a fantasy score of 85.5. That is over on Prize Picks, and there's nothing on Underdog.
Yeah, I mean, exactly like Brandon's saying, nobody's going to have Aguirre. I don't think many people are at all.
Yeah.
And us being a part of a small platform like this now, hopefully we can build the platform to be, to have a large following. But right now, I think we can take advantage of a situation where I think everybody's just expecting this guy and Dan Argueta to go in there and smoke him. And it very well could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of circled this fight. I'm probably a little too overexposed to Nick Aguirre, but I made sure that, all right, yeah, I'm a little aggressive over Aguirre, but I'm going to, account for Dan Argueta kind of going in there and dominating a short notice replacement also.
Don't worry if it happens. That thing's getting put on social media. Don't worry, dude. Yeah. Don't worry.
I think it's gonna. I did a 3-fighter prop parlay, which I don't like parlaying props, but I did a Charles Johnson KO prop, which we'll get to. I did a Nick Aguirre submission prop, and then I did one more. I think I lost it because it was a Sijara Eubanks via submission, and it was like plus 12,000 or plus 20,000, something silly like that. So like you throw small money on that and you can make a ton. So I hope it happens.
Exactly. You mentioned about Charles Johnson. That's our new opening fight of this fight card, taking on Jimmy Flick. 9,000 Charles Johnson, 7,200 for Flick, 21-10 over there on FanDuel. This is let's just say this is why you do never believe the R word in MMA. Mm-hmm. I don't care if Pete is 50 years old and he says that R word, I will not believe him. Never believe the retirement word in MMA. And Jimmy Flick, another example of this. This is actually a fight that I think it was about 2 weeks ago. A ton of money came in on Charles Johnson. Of course, I had raised a lot of suspicion on this one. But you just mentioned there, you love him to win by knockout here.
Yeah, I like Charles Johnson. I will tell you that from an underdog standpoint, Jimmy Flick, if he gets an opportunity, he's an opportunistic grappler where he will hunt the neck. So he will hunt submissions if they're there. And if not, he's playing jiu-jitsu and he's probably getting pounded out because in his losses, he's been TKO'd. I don't think that he has the wrestling to really get the fight where he needs it to be. I think that Charles Johnson is a better wrestler than he is. But you have to be careful that he doesn't start to go for his own takedowns, get a little too comfortable on top, get put in a triangle, similar to like Cody Durden. But that was a scramble that led to that. Up until that point, it looked like Cody Durden was going to be on his way to a TKO finish because Jimmy Flick's body language was just horrible. Like he was kind of bellied out, flattened out, was about to get pounded out. So I do think that Charles Johnson on the feet is going to make this look pretty easy. Does he have power? Not necessarily. He has volume and precision, and Jimmy Flick, I think, can get flustered on the feet, especially if his game plan is going out the window. I do expect a Charles Johnson KO via volume or just a couple shots that lead to Jimmy Flick not being able to answer en route to a ground and pound finish. So, give me Charles Johnson here at 9,000. I just wonder if there's enough behind the win to really pay off the salary. I'm expecting a finish. So, one of the biggest favorites priced as one of the cheapest 9,000 options makes a ton of sense. I'm getting to him a ton. But as far as like a complete dart throw, Jimmy Flick can take your back. He can, if Charles Johnson changes levels, goes for a takedown, he can snatch up a guillotine or off of his back, hunt a triangle or armbar. I'm accounting for that, but I'm picking Charles Johnson here. I think he's going to knock him out.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of that as well. Dylan, our Discord link is right in the YouTube comment section, so you can just click that. Free to join our community over there at Fight HQ, as we already got a nice little community over there. Of course, I'll be in there tomorrow during the fight. So I got to do a 2 TV setup, Pete. I got to have the UFC on one TV, got to have the NFL playoffs on the other TV. But I'm going to be in that Discord channel. We talked about how these fights are going on. And of course, so we kind of come to this portion of the show where we give our straight up fight picks. And as you were talking about Charles Johnson there, I was kind of going down, highlighting my picks, and I'm like, ooh, I got a problem.
Uh-oh.
I don't have the dogs barking.
Yeah, no, I tell you, that's what I'm saying. I think we're going to have a losing fighter a part of it. That's why, like, I'm punting.
Okay. I was going to ask you that question. Because like you mentioned about Stephen Kozlo back last month where you were able to take down a tournament because of him and what he was able to score. And like, if you look at these, let's just say 73 and 100 fighters, who is that Stephen Kozlo this week?
I think it's Raoni Barcelos. I do think it's Raoni Barcelos from a losing perspective. But it's Nick Aguirre for me. Like, the issue is like Raoni Barcelos, I think, is going to lose. Does he score more than he did against Timur Valiev and Victor Henry? 59 and 52? Probably not. So I'll probably put him around the 35, 40 range. I think that Aguirre's ground game, if he's in shape, and he's the bigger guy. He's the true featherweight, whereas Argueda's the bantamweight. I think that he's the fighter that I'm way too overexposed on. But I got to take a chance somewhere on a card like this. So it's Barcelos and Aguirre.
All right, let's go through our straight up fight picks here. Main event. I know a lot of people are going to pick Sean Strickland, but give me the favorite in Imavov.
Yeah, Imavov.
Damon Jackson's my guy, but I got to go Dan Ige.
Dan Ige.
I will go Punahele Soriano, but don't feel great about it.
Soriano, Extreme Couture lean.
I will go Ketlen Vieira over Raquel Pennington.
Same, Vieira.
It's Umar for me, easy.
Yeah, Umar. I mean, I think it's a tough fight, but Umar Nurmagomedov.
This is another one, like you mentioned about it a little bit earlier, going back and forth, but I'm going to go Alhassan here.
Yeah, me too. I hate it, though. Imagine if you had to, like, all the money on the line, you had to choose who wins here. Like, I don't know if I could feel confident in my answer, but I'm going to say Alhassan.
Yeah. I will go Rebecki.
Yep, Rebecki.
Basharat.
Yep, Basharat.
Nascimento. I'm going to go Argueda, but do feel a little concerned about it based on some things you said.
Yep, I'm going to go Aguirre. Complete dog, but I'm going to go with him.
And then I will go Charles Johnson, and I know you're going Charles Johnson too. Pete's Samuel's over under number on finishes 6.5. I'm going over 6.5.
Damn, you really think so? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go over too. I think it could be like a surprisingly strong finishing card and kick off the year correct.
That's literally. That is my mentality. It's a first of the year card.
Yeah.
It's been a rough couple weeks for the UFC.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say we see some highlight reel type finishes in terms of this fight card, but I mean, look, it's not the sexiest of UFC fight cards. We're not gonna sit here and tell you that this is a card that you can't miss. I mean, it's not sexy, but we gotta look at every fight card as an opportunity to make some dough.
Yeah, I really don't even care. I mean, it's nice when they get in front of a big crowd. It's an all right card. Interesting spots. Some prospects that I'm intrigued to watch perform. But I mean, definitely not a pay-per-view card. It's clearly an Apex card, and we'll treat it accordingly because we got some good ones coming up.
Sam, we're working on that super chat. We got to build this channel up to get those super chats there. But we're gonna let your friends know about this. Is where you're gonna be able to see Meet and Pete all the time right here on Fight HQ. We'll be here tomorrow for the Q&A show. So if you got any questions, whether it's about the fights, DFS, betting, whatever it may be about this fight card, we're going to be here to touch on that tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern time, leading up to the fights there on ESPN Plus. Pete, anything you got before we got here?
No, I just want to again say thank you guys so much for the constant support over the years. If you're finding us, welcome to Fight HQ. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like that video for us if you can. Let's try to get to, let's call it 50 likes. Let's start with 50 likes. We really appreciate it. Let everybody know. Spread the word about our Discord channel. And then hopefully one day we can quit our jobs and we just can do Fight HQ. That's the goal, right? We all just want to, break down MMA fights. I'll coach some fighters and all that, and we'll be good. But again, appreciate you guys so much, and can't wait to break it down tomorrow. I don't have to work tomorrow night, so I can actually sit back and watch the fights.
Yeah, I'm involved in a lot of business over here, Pete. I'm involved in a lot over here, but we appreciate everyone tuned in here. Of course, join our Discord channel. Pete said that likes it at 50. How about we go 67 for UFC Vegas 67?
Oh, I like that. I wish I thought of that. Yeah, 67 is a good number, so let's do it.
Yeah. And Spencer mentioned, he goes, better you guys do this on Friday because the FanDuel lineups are also out. Yeah, no question about it. I mean, let's just kind of mention FanDuel right here at the end. I know we kind of pay a lot of attention over there. I really don't love the Ige Jackson fight over at FanDuel 16-14 just because of if a Dan Ige win, I just don't think it scores well over on the FanDuel side of the equation. Main event, I don't mind either side, $19, particularly if it goes. But I really feel like, and I think it's kind of like on DraftKings too, the Soriano Kopylov fight, which is 17-13, and the Ribeiro and Alhassan fight, they're both priced at $15. I feel like those are two critical fights over on the FanDuel when you're developing it. The Umar at $23, like he's got to get a finish and he's got to, get some takedowns to really rack in terms of that price point there. Vieira Pennington, don't really like that one over on FanDuel at 17 and 14 apiece. I would rather get to Javid Basharat at $18 as opposed to Rebecki and Nurmagomedov, just because I have the ability to save some money there, where Umar's $23, Rebecki is $22, for Basharat's only $18. And probably Charles Johnson at $21 would probably be the other top option I like over there on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, it's Basharat for me. He's going to be a staple for a lot of my lineups, and I think the volume and pace that he brings can actually outperform his salaries. And he's priced at a little bit of a discounted rate on FanDuel, so I'm going to take advantage of that. Hopefully, I'm correct on it. He hasn't found a finish inside the UFC, and a lot of people might be down on his finishing equity, but not me.
Samuel, I'll be honest with you, man. I really haven't checked out Super Drafted in a long time, but we'll check that out. We'll have some stuff for you on Saturday show. But of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in here for our preview of UFC Vegas 67, and we will talk to you on Saturday for our Q&A show.